Hello everyone, and welcome to my mini lesson on supporting students and children who may have experienced trauma. In this video I would like to briefly talk about what trauma is, particularly complex trauma, and how this impacts student learning and their development. I would also like to discuss the importance we have as educators to understand the needs behind children's behaviour, the importance of building strong and trusting relationships, and the significance of creating a classroom climate which supports all students to achieve their best selves. From this video you will hopefully be able to take away some strategies for supporting students who may have experienced trauma. What do we mean when we talk about complex trauma? This is the type of trauma that we really need to be aware of, as it can have effects on brain development and therefore other developmental areas such as social and emotional, which in turn affects children's learning and later success in life. That is, if they do not have earlier interventions, effective support systems and caring relationships in place. So, complex trauma is an ongoing, persistent experience of fear, terror, and distress that overwhelms a person's capacity to cope. When a child experiences ongoing stress with no one to help regulate, the brain is in a constant state of awareness and hyperactivity. When you're in a dangerous situation, your brain will use an automatic stress response called fight or flight. This helps us decide whether we need to fight or run and hide from the situation. Often children who have experienced ongoing experiences such as abuse or neglect will have their fight or flight response constantly switched on. This means no matter where they are or what environment they are in, they will think the world is an unpredictable and threatening place. So, with this in mind, it is a little more helpful for us as educators to understand the factors driving certain behaviours, which in turn will help us to support students and children to manage the learning environment in a way that meets the needs of all children. I was listening to a podcast by the Early Childhood Education Show, which interviewed psychologist Beth McGregor on her knowledge on trauma-informed practice. I highly recommend you all listen to the podcast as it really opened my eyes. In particular, she used this quote: "We need to support educators to see the little child beneath the big behaviours, and then they can see the child as vulnerable and in need of connection, and in need of regulation. Then everything shifts because they approach the child with empathy, and plans and strategies and emotional support plans come out of that space of understanding, rather than out of that space of trying to fix and change the child." So I would love to know what you all think of this statement, as for me it really opened my eyes and my mind in understanding that there is an underlying reason or need behind all these behaviours.
As parents, we've all asked these kinds of questions. How can I stop my child behaving like this? What do I do to manage her behavior? Is there something wrong with him? Why would she behave like this just to get attention? But what if the problem lies in the question? If instead we ask, how can I improve my relationship with my child? And what is her behavior telling me? We start to see that the need for attention is actually a need for connection. A child's behavior is in fact a form of communication, and it is driven by this need for an emotional connection. Children need emotional connection with their parent as a secure base to go and explore the world, and they need it to be a safe haven to come back to when things get too difficult. It's possible to control your child's behavior by threats, rules, and rewards, But stickers, treats, and time out lose their effectiveness eventually. The thing that really changes them is your presence and unconditional love. The bottom line is, they are more likely to behave well when they're feeling secure in their emotional connectedness and safe in our love. Love isn't just a warm, fluffy feeling, and it certainly doesn't mean giving in to them. Far from it. Your children need you to be bigger, stronger, wiser, and kind, so you can both set limits and take the time to understand your child's emotional world and respond to it, helping them make sense of their mess and confusion. We know this isn't straightforward. That's why with Circle of Security Parenting, we try to support parents in this way of relating to their children, from newborns to teenagers and beyond. In fact, we're seeing remarkable effects when this way of thinking is applied to other important relationships as well. Whatever the question, learning to be connected is a big part of the answer.
So the YouTube video I provided emphasizes the importance of relationships and understanding these behaviors as a bid for connection and a need for regulation. Our course principles, as well as the Early Years Learning Framework, highlight the importance of human relationships and the effects of those relationships as the building blocks of early development. Therefore, I think that this is the first step in giving a child the best chance to follow a developmental trajectory unencumbered by the effects of trauma. If we can build strong relationships with children, then we can gain their trust and their respect. We can also begin to understand their interests, needs, and triggers for certain behaviors. One of the most important feelings we want to work on is building a sense of safety with the child and letting them know you're there for them to help regulate their emotions, explore their world, and build other relationships. Some principles to keep in mind. Engaging relationships. The element of engaging children in relationship is fundamental to work with traumatized children. The experience of appropriate supportive adult-child relational exchanges is instrumental to supporting children who have experienced abuse-related trauma. Calm interactions. The ability of teachers to remain calm is crucial to developing and maintaining a calm environment for productive learning for all of our students, and especially those who we know have experienced complex trauma or we believe may have experienced trauma. Children need positive experience of connection as the basis for them to learn how to problem solve, feel safe to explore new situations, manage their feelings, remember the positive feelings associated with forming relationships, and have a working model for initiating and maintaining relationships. So, communication is important to be aware of when interacting with children who have experienced trauma. We need to be sensitive to our approaches, like raising our voice or getting down on a child's level when talking. We need to see communication as an opportunity to support children, provide language to describe their emotions, challenge their ideas, understand their needs, and to model desired behaviours. It is also important that the learning environment supports open communication, taking risks, and valuing students' needs and opinions. Here is a list of some strategies you could use when communicating with children who have experienced trauma, but should also be applied to all children. Active listening. So So this is reflective listening, empathetic, responding, active empathy, or responsive listening. This could mean, am I right in thinking what you are saying is, or it seems as though you feel. Open questioning, to gain further information and help children consider other issues or extending their thinking. This could sound like, instead of why questions, use how, what, when and where questions to avoid closed answers and questions. I messaging helps to describe how you feel and why, models language and helps to identify emotions. You could say something like, when you knock over my tower, I feel frustrated because I worked hard to build it. Could you please help me fix it? And we need to be attuned because trauma is fundamentally a disintegrative process. Children are often disconnected from their own emotional and physiological responses. The more we can understand patterns of processes of responding, the better able we are to understand the child and help them to understand their own reaction. Here are some strategies to help children regulate their emotions to master social and academic skills. You could create a safe space. This could be achieved by a simple accommodation such as creating a safe space in the learning environment for children to go when they are feeling overwhelmed. The space should be calming and could involve objects or tools for relaxation. We could provide children with language to help communicate. In some cases, children may scream at a child if his toy is taken away. Without language, the child is not able to communicate their emotions or feelings. If we help children by reminding them to use simple sentences such as, stop, I don't like that, I was playing with that, it could really help. And also, helping children to identify their emotions is extremely important. This could involve games, visuals, or storybooks. And helping children to understand others' emotions and the reasons behind them. And also, the next slide I'm going to show you is a video of mindfulness in practice. This is a tool used to help regulate emotions through controlling breath, for example, to help calm down.
Mindfulness is paying attention to your life here and now with kindness and curiosity. The program that's implemented through Little Flower Yoga utilizes strategies to help kids be able to regulate their attention and their emotions and feel good about themselves. That's the ultimate goal. Some of the specific strategies are heart and belly breathing, so the children are putting their hands on their heart and their belly and regulating their breathing as a means of attention as well as calming them down. They're learning strategies on how to regulate their energy and how to increase and decrease as needed throughout the day. Some of the other techniques are called tensing and letting go. So again, as a way to calm their nervous system. So tensing their muscles and then letting go. So again, being aware of their body and what's happening to them throughout the school day, whether they're in a math class or during lunch or recess.
It was fun to do it because it kind of relaxed me and made me feel good after a long time of working. My favorite thing about mindfulness is like the breathing exercises because it just makes me feel nice to just breathe. Because when I work, I have to do so much thing quickly before I run out of time.
My favorite thing about it is the singing bowl because my ears, they feel good listening to it. And I also like stretching because I'm very tired in the morning. It helps me get ready for math or writing or recess or whatever's coming next.
Mindfulness is effective in terms of improving attention, social emotional functioning, giving kids a sense of control. So the Bronx Book Promise is tied into it, because if kids have these strategies, then they're able to be critical thinkers and leaders and engaged citizens. Overall, we're very excited to implement it throughout the whole school, because then all students and teachers will have access and they can implement it very easily in the classroom. The teachers are also going to get a staff development workshop. In addition, there's going to be an alternative recess plan as well, recess program where some students can participate if they want to in yoga and mindfulness during recess. So overall, we're thrilled, and we can't wait to see the impact.
So the course principle states that learning environments that are predictable, in which expectations are clear and scaffolding is employed, best support students' pro-social behaviour. This may be achieved by being consistent with rules and expectations, making sure students understand expectations and are given plenty of opportunities to practice them, using clear instructions, warning children of transitions, loud noises and new staff members, for example, and having the timetable visually available to children. So the course principle states learning environments that have high expectations are those most likely to support students to realise their full potential, and this is extremely important to support student success and confidence. Some things to keep in mind. Careful attention should be paid to the message conveyed by lowering standards. Children often interpret lowered standards as a validation of sense of themselves as worthless. Allow students to create their own expectations and goals and support them in this process. Give positive and constructive feedback. Help students change their negative thinking. Provide quality curricula which challenges students but also complements their abilities. So here I've just included this really great resource for schools. It's called the SMART Practice, and these are just strategies for managing abuse-related trauma. So the first one is predictable. We want our environment to be predictable. Traumatized children experience any change as a possible threat, so building an environment that is as sensorily familiar as possible reduces threat responses. Being responsive to children's behaviour should always stem from an understanding of the trauma-based origins of that behaviour. This may mean a disciplining framework is not always the best path. And being attuned, the more we can understand patterns and processes of responding, the better able we are to understand the child and help them to understand their own reactions. Connecting. To begin the healing process, traumatized children need to start with a process of feeling reconnected to themselves, their feelings, their physical responses, and their strengths. Translating. The way we structure a story of understanding about our experiences is a crucial integrative process for engaging with life. Children who have experienced trauma struggle to build those stories of understanding because of the impacts of that trauma. Involving. Children who have experienced trauma often struggle with relationships with their peers. However, these relationships can be a source of healing and nurturing when developed and supported. Calming. Traumatized children are in a constant state of high arousal. To facilitate positive outcomes for these children at all levels, we need to provide and support experience of calm on a consistent and repetitive basis. And finally, we need to be engaging. As with calming, the element of engaging children in relationship is fundamental to work with traumatized children. The experience of appropriate supportive adult-child relational exchanges is instrumental to supporting children who have experienced abuse-related trauma.